Hello, everyone. Oh my goodness gracious, I just did a major faux pas.
What was a faux pas?
I did not mute chat, or I did not mute Twitch.
That's okay.
Hi,
You didn't say
everyone.
anything. I didn't say anything,
But
right? I didn't
music
say
was
anything.
playing, so I didn't want,
Oh.
yeah, the music for the background. So, anyway, hello, everyone.
Oh. Hey everyone, what's going on?
Hi, I was moderating chat right before this, so I had Twitch up.
Oh, gotcha. That's so funny.
Whoops.
That's so funny. Eh,
Anyway,
it
hello,
happens.
everyone. I'm Victoria Rogers.
And I'm Carlos Luna, and this is Learning Roll20. This is a weekly show we do on Twitch for 1 hour, and we talk about a Roll20 topic and or subject, and we just discuss it with the people in the chat on Twitch. If you're watching this in the future on YouTube, this isn't the most concise tutorial or anything like that. This is more of us just like hanging out with the community.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. We answer questions along the way. And yeah, it's a nice little chat for an hour. And today is our last one.
The last one.
It's the last one. I
Oh,
know, right? I
I
can't
just think of
believe it's
that
been
vitamin
like
C song,
I
right? It
I don't know that song. I'm just
the
laughing to go.
graduation song. The da 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 da. We
Yes.
remember something happened. Oh yeah, something. I don't know the words,
Neither do
obviously.
I, but yes. I can't believe it's been
Awesome.
8 weeks already.
It has
That's
been,
wild.
yeah. It's super wild, but
And well,
here we
today
are.
we're talking about one of my absolute favorite things ever
Yes.
to do with gaming, and that is session zero.
Session zero.
Ooh, it
Uh,
is the most
yeah.
important session you will have. I think so. And what we've been doing throughout the course of this series is we've been walking through prep of a game, all the steps that you take to prep a game and get ready to GM a game. And session zero is the last one.
Yeah, session zero. And there's a lot of different ways to do session zero, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we're gonna go over some of those aspects of it. I like it. I have an improv background, and there are so many things that like a new team would do that gets done in a session zero. Like there's so many things that like cross over. Like because again, like in improv there's so many different forms, like you can do long form, short form, you can do like you can do dramatic improv, you can do comedic, you can do games. So a lot of those things that come up in the beginning when forming an improv team or forming a new gaming team actually come up. They kind of cross over. You kind of go over the same expectations, what everyone's on board with, what everyone's into, and what type of art that they like. It kind of transfers over.
Mm-hmm. It yes, 100%. So the first thing, like, and like Carlos touched on, there are many ways that you can do a session zero, and what we're touching on is just one way. There's a lot of ideas that you can take and pull from here, and you can structure them, which whatever way you feel most comfortable doing with. But this is just something that works for us, and we've used very similar setups in our own games. I am a professional GM, and Carlos is too. I work for other publishers and I run games for their programs that they do with clients. So this is something that I use. This is a system that I use for every game that I run. And even if I'm running a campaign for a client, we still touch on it every at the beginning of every episode, or every session, and we touch on something at the end of every session, which
Yeah.
we'll be going into. So the first thing that I like to do is introductions. And introductions, you might think, well, we already know each other. We've known each other for years. We game together. We don't need those. Well, how about before you play the game, you ask a question like, all right, you don't have to say, what's your name? How long have you been
Yeah.
playing? What sorts of games are you into? You don't have to do that because you already know each other. Or you can ask those if you don't know each other. Um, and, but I like to ask, what is your favorite aspect of tabletop RPGs? What
Oh.
keeps you coming back to the table to play?
Yeah.
Because this is so important. It's
Yeah.
important for the GM to know why the players are at the table so that the GM can give them the content they want, but it's also good for the other players to know what each other want, because then you can come up with compromises.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I think it's some people might say, oh, well, I know these people. They've been my friends for years, or like I've been gaming with them for years. Yeah, that's fine. Like I've known people for years too, but like someone might not know that I'm like really into Sopranos right now. I know it was on like 10 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever, and it was really popular, but I didn't watch it 20 years ago. And now I'm really into Sopranos right now. And then, that got me to watch Donnie Brasco and, all like, so that's kind of the state of my head right now, right? Like I'm kind of into this. And if you're a game master, this is the information you want to know, right? So like anyone's like, oh yeah, I know my players. It's just like, you don't know exactly everything that's going on, or you don't know, like people change and people grow, and people are growing in different directions and their interests change, right?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I just binged The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra right now, and all I'm thinking about is like Last Airbender part 3, like set in the 50s, and like that's on my mind right now. But it might be on something else, might be on someone else's mind. So it's just like checking in and seeing like what everyone's interested into right now.
I
really
just
helps.
started reading comics. I'd never really read comics before this. People wouldn't know, but now I'm starting to get into comics, and I'm starting to read them. Because my husband found his giant cache of them, so now I've been like,
nice.
Yeah, because they're free for me to read. Why not? Let's read them. And that's something new that I'm now bringing into my games as a GM and as a player. Some of those concepts and story arcs and ideas, plot hooks and things like that.
Yeah.
So that it's just a nice way to break the ice with everyone. And even if you know each other, you get to see where they currently are in the gaming interest,
and where they are with other people, with other people at the table, right? Because you can read, like a good game master is reading the table and reading the interaction between everyone. Like a good game master isn't just going like, okay, I want to give you this, I want to give you that. They're thinking, okay, what can they give each other? Like, oh, I bet you they're really connecting on this. I can work that into the story somehow. And I should say, chat, if you have questions or if you have tips, we really love tips too. So if there's stuff that you do in your game or ways that you kind of see it in your head, drop it in the chat. If you have a question, put question at the front of it, colon, and then whatever your question is. Dragon Prince, heck yeah. Dragon Prince is awesome.
I watched the first 2 episodes. I was sick, and so I watched the first 2 episodes, and then I fell asleep, and I got better, and I haven't.
I dug that second season a lot. They do a really good job with their characters, just like Last Airbender, where they're like actually developing. Anyways, back to the thing.
All right. Next thing I like to go into with my players, and this is actually a lot of the games that I do run are on Roll20. So let me make this font bigger so that y'all can read that. I like to go over I make a simple chart on here. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll graphic design something all nicely and put it up as like a background layer, like a map layer. But this is just a really simple way of doing things. There we go. I mean, whoops. Nice. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just, it's just a chart. But it's a way to have that everyone can see together and work on this together. So the tone of a game. The tone of the game is super important because the tone of the game is going to tell you what kind of game you're running.
Yes.
So this is when I sound off and ask everyone, what's the kind of tone you want to go for? And then I write down all of the things that people say. So why don't people in chat, like, let's come up with a hypothetical game, What are some tones that you like to see? What's a tone you like to see, Carlos?
You know what? It's funny you bring this up because like I haven't ever played this before. So I've never played horror before. Like never. I've never played horror before. And it's something I've never been interested in before. Like ever. Like I'm just like, whatever. But like now I kind of am, and now I'm not. I'm not like I'm interested. Like the definition, interested. You know what I mean? I'm not like ooh gung ho about it, but I'm like,
You want to
you know, like
explore it.
yeah. If someone put it on the list, I'd be like, yeah, let's try that. Like I'm kind of into that.
Okay.
Um,
And then I would ask a follow-up question. What kind of
okay.
horror?
I guess
Psychological horror, gore,
it would probably be like some type of mystical, like
paranormal?
ancient, yeah, paranormal type thing.
There we go. So then we've got like a point. And then someone in chat says gritty survival experience. So we've got
Ooh.
survival. And then you can, so we have horror, paranormal, survival, epic. Of course, you want it to be epic. That's why we play
My,
D&D, right?
my GM's in the chat right now. TK just wrote scribbles a note.
You're welcome, TK.
Yeah.
Because TK's good at horror themselves.
Oh yeah.
So. Oh, tavern keeper city planning plus protection. I love city planning. So okay, so it's survival.
Wait,
that totally matches.
what's city planning? What's
So when your characters
like?
get to found a city.
Oh wow, I've never thought of that.
No.
So wait,
I've played in
yeah,
a few. I've played in a few campaigns where we got to do that. It's super fun.
oh wow. So it's like just playing GTA without the violence, like
Yeah, it's like founding a city. So like it depends on what kind of system that the GM uses. One that I've used in the past, actually, I used really recently for a Theros Ravnica campaign that I was running. That they founded a city, so they have building points, and they get building points by selling so much worth of gold to get a building point, or then they can use those initial building points that they spent using money to create, let's say, the lumber yard. So every session, the lumber yard creates one building point because it's creating goods, right? And then they can use those building points to create a farm, which will now bring one building point of food. And then they can go on and build a fishery, and then they can build a whatever. And then so each session they get to kind of add one thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's a lot of fun. I have fun with that. And then they've got a home base that they really care about, right? And so when that, of course, becomes its own character, and then that one, of course, at some point it's threatened. Right.
Someone in the chat asked, how do you balance theme and tone when someone wants to play, like a realistic horror and other people want to be comedic, basically? How do you do that?
How do I balance that? Well, I look at what the majority of people want. And if there can't be a compromise, like you can still have horror and comedy. I look at like Shaun of the Dead. There's an instance of comedy and horror. And maybe you can compromise with that. If you can't come up with a compromise, though, with everyone in the group, then maybe this isn't the right group. I know that, but it's valid, though, because if everyone else wants comedy and that one person wants that, like, gritty, grimdark kind of experience, it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's a fine line between like all or nothing, right? Like if someone wants to be all or nothing, well, then you have no choice. But if someone's like, hey, can you work in some grittiness in there? And like you're finding ways that you can't, I find like improv has all the answers, right? Like being specific makes things real. Comedy will be funnier for people when things are more real. So as a DM, it's really easy to get wrapped up in the comedy of it and the goofiness of it. But the more, and like, obviously, yes, let them have fun and all that stuff. But, you can swing to, if they're not letting you do serious scenes, you can do scenes that like, are happening outside that you can explain to them, right? You could explain like, oh yeah, and off in the distance, X, Y, and Z is happening as well. The more grounded you can make something, the more dramatic or comedic you can make it, because everyone has to believe it. So
Mm-hmm.
finding a way to ground them in some type of your reality will definitely help you to switch back and forth without it feeling so much like a cartoon, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
uh, like, be specific. Specificity kills ambiguity every single time. uh, yeah,
And
sorry.
yeah, and even with these tones that we have here, paranormal horror, survival, epic, city, you can combine all of those
Yeah.
together to create one campaign. And you could even put comedy in here, and it would, like you said, um, it fits. You
Yeah.
can have a bit of everything, as long as everyone's willing to compromise.
And the group kind of figures it out. Excuse me, I hit my mic. The group kind of figures it out, and it kind of moves there anyway. So like, these are the best laid plans, right? Like, this can change no matter what.
Oh
This
yeah.
isn't in stone. This is kind of like we're trying to figure out where we're going to start, and because we're setting up this process that we're doing it now, we're going to be checking in as we go to make sure like how people are feeling about the game. You know.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's the same thing with themes. So then this is like, okay, well, now we have our tone. What are our themes? What are the types of concepts we want to explore? Carlos, what with your horror, what is something you want to explore with your interest in horror?
Ooh. Hmm. Like, I like the idea of like a I don't like this idea, but like abandonment, like having that as like a common theme, where like the soul was abandoned by its others, and now it's meant to stay here. Just like the people in the party could have been abandoned at the house also, like that type
Mm-hmm.
of theme. Yeah,
Okay.
mine's really sad. I don't like. I'm not a sad person, people.
But this is something you want to explore, so
Yeah.
that's totally fine. And yeah, and I think maybe a theme in here is, hmm, what about you, chat? What are some themes do you think that would fit these tones, or that you would like to explore, that you enjoy exploring in your D&D games? Let's see, horror, paranormal. Um, I would put nature.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I would like to see how nature fits with survival, epic,
Yeah.
and then also with city. It sounds weird, but you have to
Yes, I
battle
agree.
the wilderness in order to found your your civilization, like your safety net.
Yeah. Yeah, a city is just cursed nature. If you think about it, sorry,
Mm.
it's a truth. Uh, yeah,
Okay, good
exploring. Yeah,
intentions. TK. Yes, I like that. Let's put that.
yeah,
Yeah, I like exploring those sorts of things too. I also like looking at tropes and turning them on their heads. I
yeah,
have a lot of fun with that.
yeah,
Exploring tropes. I think tropes can be really fun to explore and play around with. All right, so yeah,
yeah.
that's tones and themes.
Tones and themes.
Tones and
Cool.
themes.
So we've talked to our players. We've like, what are you guys into? Oh, I'm doing this now. I'm really into this. Like, oh, I'm really into horror or survival stuff right now. Like, yeah, these are some type of themes that I like. What happens next?
At this point, we talk about safety tools.
Okay.
Because now we've talked about the tones, we've talked about the themes that we want to be into. So now, okay, now that we've got our framework, let's talk about what makes people uncomfortable within these contexts and what people are comfortable with, so that we can have a safe, healthy, open communication style of game. So what some of the safety tools? What are safety tools? If you're not familiar with safety tools,
Yeah.
I would explain them as tools and rules, that mechanics that you have at the table that ensures everyone has a good time. and it ensures that everyone at the table is comfortable and happy and enjoying themselves. That's how I explain them.
I like to think of the tools as like shortcuts to like because again, like I think in defense of like no tools would be like I know my friends, I know these people, I know everything. And like when you are friends with people or not friends, you might not know how to talk about things that kind of like make you feel icky or make you feel weird or just like do we have to talk about that now, you
I
know, like that
know.
type of thing. And at the same time people are trying to, the entire game is cooperative, so you're trying to cooperate and you're trying to be like, you know, the person that doesn't drag everyone down or be that thing. So starting that conversation can be hard. Well, guys, I don't know, and being taken seriously can be hard if you don't go the other way. So one, you don't want to be too hard. Two, you don't want to be too soft because you want to be taken seriously. So these are literally a shortcut to that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of you like trying to come up with the best way to sit everyone down or like to kind of like air your grievances or not make things a big thing, like this is the easiest way.
Yes. Open communication from the get
Yeah.
go. Yes. You've probably, most people, I think a lot of people at any rate, have heard of the X card. The X card is being introduced at a lot of conventions now, which is great. I love seeing that. And that is, you know, people can do this, or there's an act to make an X with their arms, or they can tap on an actual X card that's on the table, and that says, no, I'm uncomfortable. I feel icky. I do not like the direction that this is going in. We need to redirect the scene. Or in some cases, stop the scene altogether. And that's a great tool. It's a wonderful tool because it
Yeah.
allows people just to quietly and unobtrusively state, oh, let's redirect the scene. Everyone knows the signal. Everyone agrees. No questions asked. That is the important thing of the safety tool. Is you don't ask questions of the X card. You just accept that someone feels uncomfortable and you move on and you redirect the scene. Do you have anything to
Yes.
add for that, Carlos?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, it's hard communicating. This is a tool that it's a mechanic. It's literally built into the game. You know what I mean? Like you can literally have this conversation or not have this conversation, but you can at least let people know and, help make the game that you want to play, right? You shouldn't be stuck at a table playing a game that everyone wants to play. And as a GM, you want this information. Like you want to make the best experience for everyone at that table. So like obviously it makes, you know, I've heard people argue either way on the side, and I'm just like, no, the more information the better. The quicker I can get this, the better. The better experience I could do. Like that's awesome. Like let's go that way. Um, so let's see. So how do you? So I have so that's the X card,
Yeah.
right? How do I like? What's the way that like? Obviously, I'm not going in there just like, let's say I don't know these people or I don't know anything about them or like we talked about themes and tones, but what are other things that like we should be aware of before we play the game?
There's another safety tool called lines and veils.
Okay.
I love lines and veils. In fact, I would value them more than the X card myself. Um, they're actually taken from the BDSM community, but
Oh,
but they're starting to otherwise known as hard and soft limits. But they've come into the tabletop RPG community now. Because again, you're role playing,
yeah,
and there's consent and topics that come up, so it translates. So there you go, a little fact for you, y'all.
that makes sense.
Um,
Yeah, that's awesome. So what's the difference between lines and a veil and like what we're getting?
so a line is something that you just do not want to see in your game. Uh,
Okay.
that's just a topic that just does not come up.
Yeah.
So common topics are, let's see, let me get my text tool up here. Common topics would be rape, sexual assault, harassment. Oh, if I could spell that correctly. Those are some common ones, right? You also have racism, derogatory comments. Those are also common ones. You often will see, I will see a lot of people state things like violence towards children.
Yeah, violence towards children, animals, violence towards animals for sure. And the thing is, like, these are all really good to know, right? You want to know about these things at the table for sure. And I think there's the other side of the coin is, like, everyone should be okay with everything because it's a game. Yeah. And it's like, dude, if you put on a crappy Netflix show, I shouldn't have to sit there for 4 hours of a crappy Netflix show. You know what I mean? Like, if this isn't something I want to watch, like, I should be able to stop it. You know what I mean? Like, I should be able to at least let you know that I'm not cool with this or whatever you decided to put on, like whatever, like, if these are things that are like, these are horrible things that we just put on the list, right? I think they're all very, very reasonable. And if you went over to your friend's house for Christmas dinner and you put on a movie that had all that stuff, like, I think it's reasonable for someone to be like, yo, turn that off. You know what I mean? Like, yo, I don't want to see that on Christmas morning. But for some reason, like, people are just like, oh, you should be fine with it because it's just a movie. It's like, no. I didn't come here for that type of game.
No, I came here to have brunch, man.
Yeah, I came here to have brunch, man. Chill out. I thought we were going to play a board game.
I thought we would have mimosas. What's this?
Yeah, I didn't know I had to see all this stuff. It's weird. Yeah. Like, cut that out. Like, And
then you can also put in other stuff like saliva. I actually have that line.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I didn't know that was a line until I was in a D&D game. And this detailed saliva thing came up. And it was a joke, and at first it was haha, but then more details came up as everyone was laughing, and I started gagging at the table.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, no, like I'm having like a real physical reaction to this. And so now I just ask, can we just not have saliva in the game? I'd appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. What? That's not a big, like, oh man, I can't believe we can't do that anymore. Can you imagine? It's like saying that, like, oh, like, of the universe, of the broad spectrum of topics throughout the universe, we listed like 8. You know what I mean? Like, we listed 8. Like, just don't talk about this stuff. And it's just like, people get upset sometimes. They're like, oh, how dare you? And it's just like, well, that's weird. Like, where's your imagination? Like, yeah.
And then that brings us to veil. Veils are topics that you don't mind being in the game, but you don't necessarily want to go into detail. So if they show up, you just kind of fade to black. So common ones are going to be sex. Torture is a common one.
I have gaslighting as mine. That's one of my veils.
Whoops. I accidentally opened up a new window.
Yeah, whenever, like, people are like being gaslit, I'm just like, come on, can we not? And it's also like kind of hard to, like, sometimes it's just hard to play, but also it makes me feel a little icky. I don't like that.
Yep. No. So sex, torture, gaslighting. That's what are other people?
Yeah. Spooky veggie. I love that name. That's awesome. I miss what veils mean. What's your best? We kind of described it, but what's like your one sentence like thing on veils? Like
something that can be in the game but fade to black.
Yeah, something that you're not spending a lot of, like. It's kind of like watching a rated R movie with your mom in the room, where you're like, oh, I need this scene to be over and not go any further. That's what it's like, right? It's like, my mom's in the room. She's sitting right next to me. God, I hope they don't do this. I hope they don't do this. Okay, it's over. Thank God. Yep. That's veils,
Romantic scenes, and actually, what? Romantic scenes with my mom I'm fine with. My mom used to give me racy books to read as a teen so that she didn't have to have sex talks with me.
We'll talk about that after the stream, Victoria. Although, yeah, that's...
Sorry. Was that too
Yeah.
TMI?
No, it's
Yeah, it's
fine. Who
fine.
cares?
It's
It's like
fine.
whatever.
Racing
Yeah, at least
books.
your mom sort of talked to you about it. Got you really into those romance novels, I guess.
Yeah. Um,
um, 5H4P35H1F7. I hope I spelled your name correctly. This is going to be a dumb question, but what is gaslighting? Gaslighting is when you try to convince someone of try to change their reality by lying about the reality, basically.
mhm.
So you try to convince someone that they're crazy. Just it's lying, but it's lying on like a world scale. It's a reality scale,
Mhm.
lying to them. It's not just like one thing. It's like constantly making them out to be, um, you know, quote unquote crazy or insane or something. Um, yeah.
Yep.
And it kind of puts them in like a helpless, vulnerable state as well, because like they don't, if you can't trust your own mind, you know, who, who
Who
can you
else can you
trust?
trust?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's lines and veils. Now, those are all great. You got your lines and veils. You sit down with your group. Everyone goes through their lines. Everyone goes through your veils. You've got an X card. Fantastic. However, there is another safety tool that is, I love it. It's my baby, and I call it. Well, I don't call it. It is called the traffic light system. So it's just like a traffic light. You have red, yellow, and green. And I know you can use simple, everyday objects like these pens and highlighter and pencil. And what it is it's a visual cue. So if something's uncomfortable, you don't like it, it's approaching line territory, and you're just like, no, we got to stop this, you just hold up something red. And then everyone at the table knows, okay, we have to end this scene right now, and let's move on to the next. Then, if you start to feel a little uncomfortable, things are approaching your veils, and you're kind of you hold up something yellow. And that's just letting everyone know we're approaching veil territory, we need to fade to black. And if let's say your character's angry or upset about something, or your character's going through something that would be kind of traumatic and you're role playing, you just hold up green to let everyone know you yourself are okay. You're just role playing and you are having a grand old time, even though your character seems upset or what have you. And what I like about the traffic light system too is you can use it to check in with people. So if you see someone is making faces, like, you can hold up like the yellow and like, hey, you okay? And then they can hold up a yellow to be like, yeah, you know what, I'm not okay. Or they could even just hold up a red and say, no, I'm definitely not okay. Or they can just like be like, they were lost in thought and be like, oh no, I'm cool. And then you constantly have this check-in, and it doesn't break the flow of the game. You just keep on going through the game, and it's just that visual check-in. And I even use this in like voice chat stuff. Like, so in chat, people can just use the letter R, the letter Y, and the letter green, the letter green, the letter G.
Yeah.
If they don't have webcams, just to kind of get in. So yeah, that's the traffic light system. I love
I think
it.
it's great. I always forget. So for me, I always see the safety tools as a way to communicate like uh, the boundaries. Like obviously that's a main use, but the green card is awesome with just checking in without messing up the flow of the game. A lot of times I'll do a scene and like at the end of the game, like 2 hours, 3 hours later, teammates might check in with me and be like, hey, are you okay about that scene and blah blah blah, and like that's fine. Whatever they want to do,
Mm-hmm.
but the entire time I'm like, oh yeah, was I giving off a vibe like, oh my god, which like if I had known that before, like if I had thought about it before, I'd be like, oh yeah, this is cool, guys, I'm totally into this is awesome. Like I could totally, that's something that like I haven't done enough, but I want to do. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely want to do more. Also, the traffic lights. Here's something other people don't talk about often. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Other people don't talk about like the value with online gaming. Like if you are playing in front of an audience, you know what I mean? Like one, sometimes your players feel the same thing that the audience is feeling too. So it's a really good
Mm-hmm.
as a performer or as a person that's putting on a show for other people. It's a good idea to like, you know, kind of like show the audience that you are on like uncomfortable here or that you are comfortable here. Sometimes you watch these streams with like these really talented people who are playing games and you know they might be improvisers, voice actors or whatever, and you as a human being are reading them, and you know they're there might be a moment where you're like, oh no, this person doesn't like this person hates this, or this person is really uncomfortable, how dare they do this to this person. And you might not even know that it's fine,
Yeah.
or vice versa, right? Like you might not even know. Like, and that's the other thing too. Like the other great thing about these cards is if you play online, which I know a lot of people do. Like a lot of people, like we're doing this on Twitch right now. A lot of people watch. A lot of people who are watching this stream right now watch games live, and they can benefit as well,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that the players are safe or the players feel safe or if they feel uncomfortable. And like, yeah, I love that, and we don't hear enough about that actually as a plus for the safety system too.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Very
Yeah.
much so. Yeah, this card was from Big Bad Con. They had these
Mm.
out. Games on Demand printed these, which I've kept and now I use it all the time.
Love it. Love Big Bad Con too. Everyone should go. Everyone in the chat right now, just go to Big Bad Con
Except
next
wait
year. Next year.
until it's safe.
Yeah. Wait till it's safe.
Wait till
Yeah.
it's safe. Okay. That would bring us to. Oh, I put. Then at this point, you would go into your character creation because now you've gone over your safety tools, your topics, your tones, and your themes. And now you can create your characters because now you know what type of characters you can and cannot kind of do, what topics for your characters and your backstories that you can touch on. And then from there, I like going into character relationships.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I purposely I do this. I think games like Teens in Space really do this well, and even for my D&D games, I steal from their relationships. I have everyone choose one positive relationship and one negative relationship with one other person in the
Yeah.
party, just so that it immediately ties everyone together.
Yeah, it's one of the fundamentals of improv is starting a scene and knowing that person and finding a reason to stay. Um, like a lot of times, and this kind of gets into you know role play in general, but like when we play sometimes we feel like, oh well, I'm playing an evil character, so I'm gonna be mean to everyone all the time and stuff. Uh, Characters are more well-rounded than that.
Mm-hmm.
People are more well-rounded than that. You might be the crotchety old man that yells at the kids on his lawn, and you know you spray the dog with the garden hose, but you go inside and you love your Hummel collection, right? You just you take so much joy in that Hummel collection or whatever it is. When you're playing with people, you need to play with people, so you need to find a reason to enjoy them or to stay, or that you want to stay, and that could be the hard thing too. I feel like a lot of people split the party, or a lot of people kind of like you get a lot of problems later on where you're like, I can't believe so and so did that, and they're like, oh, my character would do that, and it's just like your character can do so much more. That sheet is so big, and there's every single facet of like a full spectrum of what being a person can be,
Mm-hmm.
and you are focused on this one little stat instead of like a full list of stats on the entire thing. So when people try to give that excuse of just like, oh, my character would do that, it's like your character can do anything, and we have the paperwork to prove that your character can do everything. So yeah, I love that as well.
Yeah, they're fun to do. And then I like to go into world building. So I actually will often like, okay, what city are y'all from, or what town are y'all convening in? Let's create this together. And then we make a rough map, and then I can go and make a fancy version of it, like an Incarnate or something like that, and bring that over into Roll20. After we've all drawn scribbles of a town on
Oh.
Roll20. So actually, you know what? I'm gonna duplicate this here because I can show
Yeah,
you a scribble of a game that.
Yeah, let's see one of your scribbles.
Let me.
Justice says, characters are also dynamic. Characters change. Yes, absolutely. Characters change. Like you could always pivot. You can always change. You can always grow your character in any direction. That could be good or bad, you know?
Mm-hmm. So
Give your character a want and a little secret. Give him like a little a little secret.
Playing. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, is it really? Justice, get out of here. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Also, I like making NPCs with people. This is for a mass game, but I'll have them give me a name and then one adjective each to describe that NPC. And then we have a whole cast of people.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. But that I do in session 0 too. But here we go. See, this is our little map that we scribbled out.
I love it.
Of the different areas. And then I was able to go into Incarnate.
Oh yeah, Incarnate.
And create a nicer version.
Yeah.
Yeah, of our little camp.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah. I like to do a lot of that with everyone, and that way everyone's immersed in the situation, in the world from the very beginning. And then, yeah. Oh, sorry, did you have something?
No, I'm just that's like I love doing that. I love, you know, you don't have to be that prepared too. Like I looked at that and I'm just like, whoa, like that's awesome that you're walking through everyone through that. But like some people are like, I just want to get on with the game. You know what I mean? Like you can do discoverable stuff in a first session. You know what I mean? Like you can discover through role play. I know I have, you know, TK's in the chat, like we literally played 2 episodes before I gave them like a backstory on my character, because I didn't know until we started playing the game. And like it felt natural to say certain things, and I'm like, oh. So, and then, you know, sometimes things happen when you're put on the spot too. So it's like, don't feel like you're completely like, you know, put in. And again, these are all ways that we're communicating with each other. It's not set in stone. It's not forever. No one's going to pull this up later and be like, well, actually, you're not allowed to play this way because, you know, we're just using this to talk to each other. And so we can see where everyone is and what everyone likes.
Yeah. And then after all you do that, this is something how I mentioned at the beginning, because we only have about 15 minutes left. So
yeah.
Something that we said at the beginning was that you can touch base all the time, and I touch base at the end of every session that I do, and that is what I would call the feedback section. And there are many different ways to get feedback, but we're just going to talk about 2 of them here. First one is called stars and wishes. So a star is when everyone goes around one by one and says something they really liked. It was a highlight for them. So it could be something that the GM did. It could be something that they got to explore with their character. It could have been something someone else did or said, or a dice roll. It could be anything that they enjoyed that just really stood out to them. And everyone goes around the table and says something that they really enjoyed. And then you have a wish, and that is something that you would like to see more of. Something maybe you wish you had done a bit differently, and the reasons why you would have done that differently, and what you could have maybe gotten out of that differently. And then everyone goes around the table and says something along those lines as well. And then you can, as the GM, take all of what people loved, and you can take what people would like, and you can continue to add those things into your campaign so that it's a campaign of something that everyone wants.
Yeah, it's great. Like, and that's what that's some feedback that you might not know. Like I know I've played games and I might not be the best to read on some of these games, where afterwards I was like, it was really cool when this happened, and people are like, wait, you thought that was cool? And I was like, yeah, that was awesome, didn't you think? It's like, I didn't want to mess up the flow and blah 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 about it, but like that was so cool. Like, and they're like, oh, okay. And then also, like, as a GM, you realize that like a lot of times your players care more about other people's characters than they do their own character.
Mm-hmm.
I think with Stars and Wishes, when it's first mentioned to people, sometimes they're just like, oh, well, they just want to make this for their character and make that for their character. In my personal experience, it's never been that way. It's
Mm-hmm.
always been like, it was so cool when so and so did this. And maybe they'll say something like, I would love my character to like interact with something like that, like that with someone else at the table. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't invent something, like let's just be in a scenario.
Yeah.
Those are always really cool.
Mm-hmm. I love them. And then another one is called Rose, Thorns, and Buds. And that's very similar to Stars and Wishes. Sometimes people combine them, rose, wishes, thorns. And what it is essentially, a rose is a star. Essentially, it's the highlight. It's the thing that you want to highlight and really say, yes, I enjoyed this. A thorn is, it's like a thorn is something that you found challenging. It's something that maybe you think is an opportunity to improve on. And maybe a mechanic that someone introduced didn't really work out, or maybe you just didn't like this aspect of something because you found it difficult to, like a puzzle. A lot of people don't like puzzles, and because they find it challenging, it just challenges them in a way that their brain doesn't work, and that's a-okay. Everyone's
Yeah.
different. And so that might be something you would bring up if you didn't really, if you found a puzzle a little too challenging, or that style of puzzle. It was like a
Mm,
word puzzle, and you're like, you know what, word puzzles really aren't my thing. That would be a thorn. And then there's a bud, which is like a wish. So that's again something you would like to explore, something you would like to see more of, something like that.
yeah, I love all of these. This is the first time I had heard of these. I heard Stars and Wishes, and there's kind of like there's play in all of them, and they kind of you can still do both actually.
Mm-hmm.
Rose, Thorn, and Bud are great because sometimes you do get in a situation where you're like a thorn, where it's just like, that was really challenging. I know I might have seemed like I was frustrated at the table, but like, I don't want you to change it. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to do this again for the next game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I still thought that was really cool. And it's great to check in, because as a GM, sometimes you throw something at them and they're like, it looks like they're miserable and they don't figure it out and they don't like it. And you're just like, I'll never do that again. And you never run another puzzle in your entire life. But if you have that conversation where they're just like, yeah, that was hard. I feel like if I would have just got an extra 15 minutes on it, I would have been able to do it. And like, I really want to do stuff like that again. And that's feedback that you want, like,
Mm-hmm.
every single time.
Yeah. So yeah, that is session 0. Does anyone
Session
have any
0.
questions about session 0?
Yeah, if you're running a 4-hour game, dedicated the last half hour to getting feedback from your players and winding down. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing, um, they're gonna wind down anyways. You know what I mean? Like, they might wind down separately, and then they might complain about Kevin, and then they might, you know what I mean? Like, and then all the problems in the entire game, every single roll, everything that went wrong because of Kevin. And like, and it's all this misplaced frustration that a lot of us don't even realize. Like, we saw this again. I keep talking about improv, but like, we keep seeing, we would see that all the time, where you're just like, what so and so did to me on stage, what happened in the scene, and blah blah blah. And the reality is, it's just like, all that can be avoided if we just talked about it. That communication, that's all this is. It's just communication.
Mm-hmm.
There's a list, there's books and books and books of mechanics on how we talk to each other in character and how we interact in character, but there's nothing on how we interact in person when we're out of that character. And it's like, we just spent 4 hours pretending, and you don't think any of that is going to carry over to your real life.
There's going to be bleed.
Yeah, there's going to be bleed for sure.
Yeah.
Classic Kevin.
I'm laughing because my husband's name is Kevin.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's playing D&D in the other room right now.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
No, it's a name. It's like being named Karen, you know?
Yeah.
Or Chad.
Or Chad. Yeah. If you are in the chat right now and you have questions you want to leave us, we have like an extra 10 minutes, 9 minutes, something like that.
Yep.
We're happy to answer them on this subject. Thank you for sticking around and learning this stuff and talking about all this stuff with us. I think this is a great tool. These are all great tools, and they are severely overlooked, you know, in a lot of people's games. And I feel like people can be getting some spectacular games if they just checked in. Like, as a GM, you want to hear these ideas, you want to know, and you can like literally source the material from your players. It's like if I was writing a movie and like I knew the exact audience that was going to pay for that ticket, I would want that information.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Thank you, El Warriors. I rescind my statement. Kevin is the best.
Yeah. I think we can wrap it up.
So.
Yeah. This was our last episode, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. There will be some other type of this happening sometime. I don't know exactly in what form it will be, but this was really fun.
It was.
We had a lot of people here watching these things. These are great.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you, mods, for hanging out and chat with everyone.
Yeah. My name is Carlos Luna. You can find me on all social media under Carlos Crits. You can find me tonight on this channel at 8 p.m. Pacific time for Indoor Recess. We are playing Odysseys of Theros. It's a lot of fun. I play a broken wing harpy named Wanch. Yes, it is funny and serious at the same time.
I'm Victoria Rogers, and you can find me over at the Broadswords. I am the GM and producer for it. We're an all-woman and non-binary D&D actual play podcast. We actually start season 3. It will come out July 4th. We have special guest Patrick Rothfuss and Tiffany Alvord. Yeah.
Wow.
Pat came and played with us. So.
Oh, Pat. You just know him as Pat.
You know, sometimes he texts me now.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Cool.
You know. Patrick Rothfuss will be on there, and he's going to be playing a character that I think a lot of fans of Critical Role will be familiar with.
Oh.
Yeah, so that will...
Are the universes connecting?
The universes are connecting. He actually talked to Matt Mercer and got some info, and now his character that was on Critical Role and then later was in Acquisitions Incorporated is now coming into the Broadswords universe.
What?
I know.
It's like the Spider-Verse.
I know.
Whoa, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So that's going to be happening on July 4th. And then mid-July, you should really keep your eye out on the Roll20 socials because an announcement's going to be coming out.
Yes. I heard about that. Are we not allowed to talk about that?
It hasn't been announced yet.
Okay, then we'll wait till
we'll wait till it's announced.
Yeah,
but it's going to be announced.
You just whispered to 300 people live right now. I don't know who you're. I don't.
Sorry about that. I did not mean to go over to the starting screen. I hit my hand. I hit my mouse. Oh. Anywho.
Cool.
Now that I've whispered to 300 people, I think that's it. Is that it?
Awesome. Yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Bye.